Hi Design Pros, welcome to the Lunch and Learn Business Growth Series. I'm Elsa Johnson, your host and founder of Elsa Johnson Coaching, where I guide my clients to lead with intention and thrive by design. This series is designed for you, interior designers and window coverings business owners who are ready to level up, attract more clients, and grow with confidence. Each month, I bring in industry experts to share game-changing strategies that you can apply right away. No fluff, no sales pitches, just real value to help you thrive. So grab your notes, get inspired, and don't forget, subscribe to the channel for more expert insights and updates. You'll find all the event details and contact information for myself and the industry experts in the notes below. Ready to grow? Let's dive in. I think we should be good. So let me start by introducing myself. I'm Elsa Johnson. I have had my own interior design focusing on window coverings for over 2 decades in a couple of different locations, the Chicagoland area, Philly area, and then Scottsdale, Arizona, where I live now. In around 2018, I started realizing that all the things that was wrong in my business had nothing to do with what I knew, but what I actually thought about what I did. And I started on a personal journey of transformation. And today I have found my purpose, and my zone of genius is helping other window treatment professionals and interior designers build their business with much more joy, with less overwhelm and overthinking. And this is one of the reasons why I put on this event is because when I started my window coverings business in the mid-90s, the big difference for me was the group, like Buddy's group, the network, and it was also my WCAA community. I know we rely on other people in this network to avoid all the mistakes, to learn from, to be inspired and grow with. So this is why I've created this forum. As you all know, it's free to attend, and it's not to sell you anything. It's simply for us to grow together. So with further ado, I want to introduce Jessica, who I've known for quite a while, and I'm just really excited that you're here today to teach us something that is so important. It doesn't matter whether you have 1 employee, 10 employees, 20 employees. We all have clients. We all have subcontractors. And knowing how to talk to people, how to interview, how to get the things out of them that is important, that communication piece is vital for every project to go right. So without further ado, Jessica, I give you the floor.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to see some nice friendly faces and meet some new as well. I have a couple of visuals that I'm going to share with you. So we're just going to share the screen. Can everyone see those slides? Amazing. All right. So quick introduction on my side. Thank you, Elsa, for yours. I am in the Chicagoland area, but we travel all across the country and work with window covering and interior design businesses just like everyone else here. I, for one, have been in the window covering industry for 15 years, originally from a family business where I was 4th generation. And so I got to work all the roles. And my primary role was to bring on team members, train them, and get them to be successful in their role. And so that kind of spiraled behind the design, where we are people and process consultants, where we help, in some cases, recruit for other business owners or teach them how to do it. So we're going to focus on the interviewing techniques today that we come across on the recruiting side. And Pauline is actually one of our recruiters. So she, I'm sure, will be here for any of those questions that come our way after the presentation. So we want to get into 3 things today. Why hiring takes so long. You know, a lot of times people pin it on the interviewing process, that they're just not getting the right candidates, or they're not knowing exactly if they have the right candidate in front of them. So identifying why does it take so long, crafting the perfect question is part of those interviewing techniques, and then what red flags to watch out for in the process so you don't have a surprise down the line. So let's begin with the why does hiring take too long? And it comes down to three basic things. Either you're not competitive enough, your timing is off, or you don't know what you're looking for. And there's a lot of layers to each one of these things, so we'll break it down further. When you are looking at being competitive, you want to narrow it down to specifically your area, the research for, let's say the Chicago market. And when we say do market research, what I mean is very simply take the role of the person that you're looking for, go to Google and put that role and the word salary and then the city that you're looking in and just see what the results show, which will be about a whole page and a half of different salary ranges from different sites that are pulling the data from essentially those that are posting ads online. It's scraping all those ads to figure out for that title in this area, how much are people compensating for that? And then there's also platforms where candidates, employees can post what their salaries are. Even like on Indeed and Glassdoor, they can report that. So all of that data combined is coming into your friend Google. And we want to do that market research to understand, that you're going to be competitive for that role. Now, certain roles, let's say a project manager. Project manager is such a broad term that applies in very different ways in different industries. So you also have to do industry research, needing to know, what type of project manager you have compared to a project manager, let's say on a construction site or, with a tech company or a health company. So the specific industry will also dictate what your competitive nature is. And then if you're worried about, paying too much upfront versus what you want to get out of it, then structure your compensation that you're rewarding on results. So ultimately, you're getting someone that is competitive in nature, that does want to win and be able to be compensated for that. So first and foremost, you have to be competitive. Then it gets into timing. You have to be prepared to move fast. What does that mean? You need to have a list of what you're looking for. You need to have a process. You need to have certain interview questions ready and queued up. And in that preparation, you'll be able then to, number two, make decisions at every step. Because one of the things that folks do in the interview process as a hiring manager or an owner is they become indecisive because you're seeing a couple different people. People have all different personalities. And in those personalities, it's kind of hard to figure out what is fact, what is emotion, what are they lying about or expanding the truth on. And so all you need to do, though, is make a decision and move on. So here's an example. If you have three candidates that you're facing and you don't know which one is good, you're not sure which one you want to hire. If you're not at the last stage of your hiring process and you're halfway through, then move one or two forward. You still have a couple of steps to get to the end. And even if, let's say, you don't have anyone to compare them to, you just have one that you're like, oh, I really like them, keep progressing them toward the finish line. The worst thing that can happen is you just don't offer them the position at the end. You just have to show the candidate that there is progress, and that will keep them warm. That will keep them moving along the line to the finish line. And you don't want to wait to communicate, meaning if you are on the fence with a candidate, but you are leaning towards bringing them to the next step, call them, contact them, get them on the calendar, even if it's a week later, even if it's 2 weeks later, at least they have some sort of commitment and communication from you that they're ready to move forward and excited to get to the next stage. A lot of candidates will wait if they're getting communication in between. And then that third thing, we don't know what we're looking for. So we have to be able to define success. The first thing we can do is a SWOT analysis. So we want to figure out what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the the position that we're going to be filling. So example, if you have a salesperson, what are the strengths of a great salesperson? They can talk numbers, they're confident, they can relationship build. What are the weaknesses? Well, they may not be detailed. They may not sit still for very long and be able to do really analytical work. So it kind of depends on exactly what you're looking for, but that's why you have to define what are those strengths and characteristics of the position, and then what sort of opportunities do they have for growth. If it is sales, that might just be financial growth. If they're a process coordinator coming in, can they become a process manager? So looking at the growth path for that person will help you actually in the conversations with that person paint a more bright and clear picture. We also want to ask open-ended questions. That is super important. So during the process, we're actually getting the best view of the candidates. So we're not guessing along the way. And we want to follow a process, because if you just get wowed by one candidate that's really fabulous, had a great conversation, you keep them moving, but you skip a couple of steps, maybe you were supposed to bring them in person and then you were going to do a reference check. But if you skip those steps and you give them right to the offer, the steps are there to weed out different people. And folks aren't always consistent. So what they show up and do on their first interview may not be able to be retained and consistent all the way to the offer stage, where we want to see that consistency. We want to get similar answers along the way and not act like this person is totally, a different person that we didn't expect. So follow the process. It's going to help you weed out those inconsistencies. Now, getting to the actual interview itself, we have to craft the perfect question. So we'll talk about how to do that, but then we also need to be able to listen and hear the right answers. So in crafting the right question, we need to start with that open-ended question, which starts with who, what, where, when, why, how. If we start a question with one of these words, it automatically is open-ended. And what this allows you to do is have the candidate speak more from the heart, from experience, and give more details versus did you, should you, could you, have you, can you. All of those closed-ended questions lead you to a yes or no answer. Now, you should be asking questions like a tool in your tool belt. So 90% of your question asking is open-ended. We want the explanation from the candidate. But sometimes we're going to use that closed-ended question just to get the yes or no answer, right? Salespeople have a good time at dancing around the question and giving examples, but not actually answering it. And so if we want to pin them to a yes or no, then we bring up the closed-ended question, did you, should you, could you, can you, have you. We don't want to explain first either. That gives too much information to the candidate, too much power to the candidate, and then doesn't allow us to know the real truth. If you explain something like, well, this role is going to be very fast paced, you're going to be on the road constantly, how are you going to handle that? Even if you phrase it as an open-ended question, but explain first, now the candidate knows exactly what you're looking for, and they're going to repeat it back to you in some manner, and they just won. Regardless if, it's truthful or not, they're going to naturally want to sell themselves. So it's going to sound like they can do it, even if their words say they can't. Don't explain first. Always ask the question first, or come up with a question based on that explanation. Leave all of the rest of the explanation towards the end after you've asked the questions. And last, of course, don't discriminate, but that doesn't just mean your typical, racism, religion, things like that. I'm also talking about financial discrimination, age discrimination, maternity leave and things like that. So we can't ask if someone's going to plan on getting pregnant or are pregnant. That can't happen. But we also can't ask things like, what kind of car do you drive? That's a financial discrimination. We can ask, how do you plan on getting to the job? Or is there anything that would prevent you from reliably getting there? But if you're looking for a salesperson that's going to use their own vehicle, we cannot ask them what type of car do they drive. That's just a too specific question that if they had like a Mercedes versus, some junk clunker, that you could discriminate on. So stay away from those types of questions. Instead, we can approach it with a different type of question that might still get a response from, what type of car do they drive, but that's not what you're trying to get at. What you're trying to get at is, can you bring the samples to the location, and can you reliably get to the location? Those are what we're trying to get to. So ask that. And then listening skills wise, we can't interrupt our candidates while they're talking, especially with what I call the lack of a poker face. You can't like go, oh yeah, oh my God, that's so amazing. Well, then you just told them everything how you are thinking right now. You want to just ask questions neutrally so they feel comfortable. We want them to open up. We're not tricking them in any way, but we don't want to interrupt their thought process. So just let them finish. We also don't want to save them. If they can't answer the question, don't give them an example, right? We don't want to give them that information that helps them trigger a thought. Give them time if you want to save them. Don't give them the answer. And ask follow-up questions. That's where you're actively engaged in listening to them. If they told you an answer, ask 2 or 3 more follow-ups to that, because then you'll get some more detailed answers out of them. And take some notes. There might be things that the candidate brings up while they're talking that makes you think of another question, but instead of derailing it and going down a rabbit hole, take some notes and then circle back to those questions so it's not a frantic interview, and then you forget to ask certain key questions that would normally be in your process, but you had the squirrel moment, so it made you forget. And then last, you've got your red flags to look out for. First off is vague answers. We want them to be detailed in their answers. Give examples. If they aren't pinning down examples, it may be a good sign then they don't have an exact memory or experience in doing those things. They can't recall that. And they might even say something like, oh, well, that was so long ago. I'm sorry, if it was 5 years ago, you can recall certain details that would give examples of the questions that we're asking. So avoid those vague answers from them. We also want to watch for redirect questions. Salespeople are great at this. So you may ask them a question like, well, what was your process in sales? And they'll go, oh, well, it kind of just depends on every customer. What process do you have? And they don't really answer the question. They redirect the question to you. And what this is doing is it's asking you for the information that they need to sell you on. So again, don't explain before you ask the question. If they redirect you, then you just redirect them back. Oh, that's a great question. I'll write it down. We'll address that later. But let's get back to you answering that question. If they don't have questions, it's a total red flag. To me, recruiting and interviewing is like dating. Think about this. If you're going on a date and then after 2 or 3 dates, someone asks each other to marry them, if that person had no questions after 3 dates, don't you think that might be a red flag? Like, what is going to be our living relationship? What's our finances like? There's a lot of big things that need to happen. If they have no questions, they are not engaged. They are not the right one for you. And they're not going to be that inquisitive person you need for them to be in the role, since this is a long learning curve to get up to speed in window coverings and interior design. And if they don't remember the job, like to an extreme degree, like where they say, oh yeah, I've applied to 30 different jobs. What is this again? And they're kind of disrespectful about it. They're not the right person either. The only time I give them grace that they don't remember the job is if I'm calling them 24 hours after they've given me an application. And yes, they might have applied to 30 different jobs, but they weren't expecting my call. That's the only time I give them that grace. But if I have the call with them, I explain it, I'm like, oh, I'm excited, let's get you to an interview, and they show up at the interview and they still don't know what the job is, not the right person. So those are the key red flags when you are interviewing folks. I know that was a ginormous fire hose of information. So I'm curious what your questions are now.